Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. We got another Ballen. We stay fly, no lie, and you know it. We got this missing hiker case. Takes the most unimaginable Hollywood turn I've ever seen.
What?
Say what? You heard.
Okay.
All right. It's gonna be all right. I say all. All crazy.
Very.
Make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. All you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals.
Lock it in with a thumbs up.
Man, let's get into it, y'all. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. You ready,
I'm
C?
ready.
Let's go.
Today, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about real people who had something totally unexpected and insane happen to them, think like stranger than fiction, that kind of thing, that not only changed their lives, but also in some of these cases, changed the lives of millions of other people too. Now, these stories are kind of a slight departure from what is considered normal on this channel. They're not that far off, but they're a little different. So if you like them, let us know in the comments and we will do more of them. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan...
Now, Ballen, everybody has told you the type of videos they like. We want to see true crime-related content. We want to see the strange and mysterious but true. We want you to go back to tackling real life events. You know what I'm saying? All right? That's all I want to see.
Fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please put glitter in the like button's car vents so when they turn on their AC, it gets blown all over the inside of their car. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On the afternoon of July 9th, 2001, a 13-year-old boy named Cody Clawson carried a bag of camping supplies through the woods near Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Cody had come to the woods for a camping trip with his dad and his Boy Scout troop. But about 30 minutes earlier, he had broken off from the main group, they were over at camp, and he had hiked a couple of miles to his dad's truck to pick up some extra camping supplies. And now that he had those supplies, he had turned around and begun hiking back towards the rest of the group. As Cody hiked along, he kind of let his mind wander. He was thinking about what story he was going to tell that night around the campfire to impress the other Boy Scouts. But as he was thinking about it and kind of walking along, he started to realize that things didn't look familiar. And at some point, he started to wonder, why haven't I actually reached the campsite yet? And at that point, he stopped, he didn't panic, and he just kind of looked around and realized that he actually had left the path. He was not even in an area that he had seen before. And so being a Boy Scout, he kind of stayed calm and he just turned around and decided he would retrace his steps back to his dad's truck and start again. He would obviously be very late back to camp, but at least he'd come back in one piece. But as he retraced his steps, he really didn't know where he had come from, because again, he had sort of left the trail because his mind was wandering. And so before long, Cody realized he was totally lost and he started to panic. Hours passed by as Cody frantically walked around the woods, calling out for help, but not hearing anybody calling back to him. And then as the sun began to set, he also noticed that storm clouds were rolling in. And so this situation was becoming dire very quickly. But he told himself, don't worry, my father and the Boy Scout troop, they clearly know by this point that I'm missing and they must be out looking for me. But Cody knew there was no telling how long it would take for them to find him. I mean, it could be hours, or it could be days. Or, the thought was totally terrifying, but they might not find him at all. But at this point, Cody was able to calm himself down and tell himself, hey, you're a Boy Scout. You can do this. You can at least stay out here, make a shelter, build a fire, and kind of just wait while someone comes to find you. That's all you can do at this point. And so he had his bag of supplies with him, and so he took it off and he dumped the contents out. And quickly he realized The contents of this bag were not going to help him. Certainly not going to help him build a fire or shelter. But worse than that was there also wasn't any food, and he barely had any water. So effectively, he had nothing. And then, of course, to make matters even worse, the sky suddenly let loose, and Cody was caught in a major thunderstorm. And so Cody rounded up whatever he could, threw it in his bag, and just started running in the dark through the trees as hail is pelting him and it's thunder and lightning, and he's got no idea what he's gonna do. And then suddenly lightning flashes across the sky, and for a second the forest is illuminated, and right up ahead of him is this cave. And so Cody runs into the cave and he takes shelter inside of it. It's pouring rain outside, it's so loud, it's so chaotic, and he's terrified. But now it's like his body just shuts down. He's so overwhelmed, he's so scared as he's laying there like wondering, am I gonna die out here? That he just closes his eyes and passes out just from sheer exhaustion. The next morning, Cody woke up still sheltering inside of this cave. And the first thing he noticed is when he looked out into the woods was the storm had stopped, the rain had let up. And then the second thing he noticed was he heard the distinct sound of a helicopter flying somewhere nearby. Cody instantly ran out of the cave and looked up into the sky, and sure enough, there was this small helicopter flying around roughly in his area. And so using some of his Boy Scout training, he pulled off his belt and he used the metal buckle of his belt to reflect the sunlight back up at the pilot to get the pilot's attention. And it worked. He got the pilot clearly to notice him, and before long, he noticed the pilot hovering down lower and lower right over the tree line, looking for a place to land. And so Cody is so overjoyed, he's about to be saved. He grabs his stuff and just charges over roughly to the area where the pilot's trying to land, and by the time he gets in that vicinity, he sees the pilot actually touching down in a clearing. Cody can't believe it. It's only been one day and he's been found. And so Cody runs over to the helicopter, throws the door open, gets inside, and the pilot just turns around and says, "Good morning." And Cody, at first, doesn't really register what's happening here. He's only just completely relieved that he is going to survive. But then he kind of stops and looks at the pilot, and he can't believe who it is that's just rescued him. It would turn out the night before, when Cody did not return to the camp, his father and the Boy Scout troop did contact authorities, and before long, a local search party was organized. And one of those people who volunteered to be a part of the search was an amateur pilot who lived in the area. That helicopter pilot was the one who found Cody 10 miles away from his Boy Scout troop's camp.
Damn.
When that pilot reunited Cody with his father, Cody's father naturally assumed that, given the trauma of the last 24 hours, that Cody would not want to rejoin the Boy Scout troop and continue this camping trip, that he would want to go home. But instead, Cody said, no, I want to go back to the Boy Scout troop. I want to sit there and tell them what happened to me, because now I have a campfire story that they are not gonna believe. Cody had trekked 10 miles through the wilderness all alone, spent the night with bears out in a cave somewhere in the middle of a storm, and then ultimately got rescued by this amateur helicopter pilot who happened to be, at the time, one of the most famous people in the world. The amateur pilot was the actor who had played Han Solo in Star
Not
Wars.
this man
He was
again.
Indiana Jones and had starred in several other major blockbuster movies. It was none other than Harrison Ford.
I'm tired. At this point, Harrison Ford, bro. Stay at home, mother.
He be everywhere, child. Just
Bro,
out
this
here.
ain't the first story.
I know. But that's a great thing, though.
Yeah. But god damn, Harrison, you gotta be Mr. Captain Saver.
No.
He's saving everybody, man. Damn.
That is a story to tell, though.
That is, bro. Especially Harrison Ford come save me. Shit, I'm telling everybody. And can I get an autograph? Especially 2001. Can I get an autograph? Then it's in July. My friends how old was Cody?
13.
He was what?
13.
Oh, when he went to school, he got a story to tell, bro. It ain't just a campfire. Man, I got lost in the woods or something. Boy! You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got lost in the woods. I was 10 miles away from my family.
I was out there
I stayed
in a storm.
There was no food, no water.
Nothing.
I had to live in a cave. Boy, I wonder what Cody doing with his life now. What he doing with his life now, y'all?
No, I wonder.
In September of 1954, A 14-year-old boy named Rich shuffled his way down the hallway of a children's hospital in England. He coughed and wheezed as he slowly walked down the hall next to other sick kids as they made their way towards the hospital's classroom. Now, Rich didn't know what kind of lesson he and the other kids were going to get today, but frankly, he didn't care. Anything was better than just sitting in his hospital room, bored out of his mind. So Rich was in the hospital because he was suffering from tuberculosis, which is an infectious lung disease. And over the past 10 weeks, he'd been bouncing around to different hospitals. And in fact, his condition was still so bad that this hospital had informed his parents that Rich might need to stay in the hospital for another 2 years. And as awful as this sounded to Rich, this actually was not the first time something like this had happened to him. When he was 6 years old, his appendix burst, and then he contracted an infection that left him in a coma for several weeks. And then when he came out of the coma, he had to recover in a hospital for nearly a year. And all this time in hospitals had really impacted Rich's life, in particular in terms of how far behind he had fallen in school. And because his family was not a well-off family, they couldn't afford to hire a tutor to kind of keep Rich up to speed. And so basically at this point, Rich's education consisted of, whatever random classes these hospitals he was staying in sporadically had. Whenever they hired a teacher to come in and teach basket weaving or, shop class, whatever was available, that was his education. So that day, when Rich walked into the hospital classroom, he did not have high expectations about what he would be taught that day. He figured it was just going to be some random class that he would sit through that at least was keeping him out of his hospital bedroom. But the instant he saw the teacher for the day and saw what was surrounding the teacher, he was really excited. Because all around the teacher were musical instruments. And Rich, as a kid, had always dreamed of playing the drum. He had seen one day in a Windows shop a drum set, and he had wanted it so badly, but his family didn't have the money to pay for it, so he had never had a chance to do it. But now it seemed like Rich was finally going to get his chance. And so when the teacher began handing out the instruments to the kids, Rich demanded that he get the drum set. He would not play anything else. And the teacher was like, okay. And so he was given the drum. And then that day, the teacher led the class, through a couple of basic songs, and Rich played the drum, and he and everybody else were objectively terrible, like the music was awful. But by the end of the class, Rich was totally revitalized here. I mean, he hadn't discovered some special new talent for playing the drums, but he had discovered that he had this amazing passion for playing the drum. It was like all he wanted to do now. And he figured that because he was going to be stuck in the hospital for the foreseeable future, he would just spend all of his time on practicing playing the drum. So the following day, Rich went into a closet in the hospital and he found these long sticks that were normally used for knitting, and they became his drumsticks. And for the next year and a half, Rich basically banged these makeshift drumsticks on anything he could to practice. And then also every few weeks, when the music teacher came back to the hospital, Rich would go to those classes and he would try to learn as much as he possibly could from the teacher. And that was basically his whole life, was those classes and banging on everything he could. Finally, in 1955, when Rich was 16 years old, he was released from the hospital. He was finally cured from tuberculosis. However, despite having his health back, it isn't like his life suddenly got a whole lot easier. It isn't like, he left the hospital and, magically became this amazing drummer and that was his life. Instead, his family was really struggling financially, and so Rich couldn't go back to school. He basically had to get a job in a factory and work full-time just to help support his family. And for Rich, he felt like that was the right thing to do. He didn't resent his family. This is what his life was. And what he did is he found joy, while he was working in grabbing makeshift drumsticks and just banging on stuff any chance he could. And he figured that that would be his life. He would just work and, find joy in drumming whenever he could. But Rich's outlook on life changed dramatically on Christmas of 1956, so a year after he'd left the hospital. Because on that Christmas, Rich's stepfather had secretly saved up all this extra money by working all these extra shifts and doing whatever he could to finally buy Rich his own drum set. To this point, Rich had not been able to have his own drum set. Everything was makeshift. And so that Christmas, he gets this drum kit, and Rich is like, this is the best gift I've ever been given. And he began practicing even more. And pretty quickly, he began playing with local bands every time he had time off. And before long, he became known as like a guy in town who was like one of the best drummers. And then shortly after that, right as Rich is kind of hitting his stride, being this kind of local celebrity, this local very popular band fired their drummer. And so it made perfect sense that they approached Rich and said, hey, will you join our band? And Rich said, let's do it. By this point, Rich had become known by his stage name, Ringo Star, and that band that recruited him was the Beatles.
Yeah.
At the end.
No, after a while, I figured.
was like, okay.
Cause I was
Then I
like,
forgot these was like Hollywood, like Unmatchable Hollywood. And then I said, oh. And then
But
I was
also
like, where we at?
England.
Yeah. I said, oh, yeah.
Time period all made
I was about
sense.
to say, Rich about to be a star.
But also, I don't know too much about like the Beatles like that, like 100% like where I could be like, hey, this the member of the Beatles, this guy. I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
But that's Rich right there.
Why? How you know that's Rich?
Because he playing the drums. I'm crazy.
But
yeah.
I do know like the early success of them, like
Yeah.
studying like and people's like certain artists they looked up to in America, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, with the blues and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah. What you looking up? You trying to see which one is Rich?
Oh, this him now.
Oh, he's still kicking, huh?
Yeah, he 84, y'all.
He's lucky too.
He actually don't.
No, I'm saying he looks like a rich 84-year-old.
Oh.
I'm saying like them rich motherfuckers.
Oh,
That's what he look
look
like.
at him. No. I'm crazy.
You talking about beating the odds though?
Facts.
That's crazy, bro. Especially that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
medical
what's up.
wasn't at it is like it is nowadays, you know. But hey, let's go ahead and get back.
Sorry, y'all.
It's crazy.
Around 11 a.m. on Sunday, October 20th, 1991, a 31-year-old man named
Hold on, what?
October 20th, 1991. At 11 a.m.
1991.
11 a.m. on Sunday, October 20th, 1991, a 31-year-old man named Will woke up next to his wife in their home in Oakland, California. And the first thing Will noticed as soon as he was awake was the smell of smoke. Will got out of his bed and went to the window, and when he looked out, he could see there was this big plume of smoke coming from what looked like right outside of his neighborhood. And since he lived in California, where wildfires were unfortunately a common reality, he thought that's got to be a wildfire. So Will called 911 to report it, but the dispatcher told him that yes, that is a wildfire. It's on a mountainside, about 600 feet away from Will's house in his neighborhood. But they said the fire department was already all over it, and the smoke he was seeing was simply the leftover, after the fire had been put out. So no real threat here. And so after hearing this, Will's mind was put at ease. He thanked the dispatcher and hung up, and then he went about his normal morning routine. And as he brushed his teeth and took a shower, his mind began to wander towards work. So Will was a software developer, and he was in the middle of working on this video game about ants, like the insects, and how they go about building their homes. And Will was really excited about this game. But as Will left the bathroom and happened to look out the window that he looked out before and saw that plume of smoke out on the mountainside, any thoughts of his video game immediately vanished. Because now he was looking out and he saw this huge cloud of smoke that, in addition to being much bigger, there was also obvious flames licking up. Like clearly the fire is not extinguished, and worse, it appeared the fire was moving in the direction of his neighborhood, and pretty quickly. And so Will immediately grabs the phone and he calls 911 again, and he reports that, hey, I'm seeing a fire here. And he could tell just from the dispatcher's voice that they were kind of surprised. They felt like the fire was under control. Like, what are you talking about? And so Will realized, based on this response, I can't afford to wait for help. I mean, it's unclear if they even know what's going on here, and this fire appears to be moving right towards me. And so after hanging up with the dispatcher, Will knew he had to act. And so Will runs to his wife, who by this point, she's looking out the window too. She's terrified. And they're like, what are we going to do here? And they decide, we just got to evacuate. By this point, the fire is literally coming right towards them. The smoke is beginning to overwhelm them. And so they just grabbed a couple of bare necessities. They charged out of their house and they're looking down the street. And again, the smoke by this point is kind of, making it hard to see, but they can see other neighbors are frantically getting in their cars to evacuate as well. And Will and his wife, they're about to speed off when they remember their neighbors had gone away for the weekend and they had left their old parents to look after their 2-year-old kid. and they didn't have a car. And so Will's like, oh my gosh, he runs next door, he pounds on the door, and the grandparents, they come out and they're scared as well. They have the 2-year-old, and Will's like, come on. They grabbed a couple of necessities, they hopped in Will's car, and before long, all of them were peeling down the road, evacuating. 1 week later, Will returned to his neighborhood, this time in the passenger seat of a police cruiser, because you needed an official escort to be able to go into this area because of how dangerous it was. There was debris everywhere. When the police officer stopped in front of Will's address and Will got out, he looked at where his house used to be, and it was just gone. Like every other house in his neighborhood, it was completely leveled by this fire. That fire burned for 4 days, destroyed thousands of homes, including basically Will's entire neighborhood, and it killed 25 people. Will walked towards the rubble that used to be his home, and as he stood there surveying the area, he was hit with this epiphany. He didn't really care that he had lost all of his things, like everything he owned basically had been destroyed by this fire, but he just didn't care. Instead, all he cared about and all he was grateful for was his family. Like they had survived, they'd escaped the fire. That's what mattered. And so as he's standing there, sort of a little bit numb to what's happened here, he looked down and he saw ants. Now remember, he was developing this video game about ants, and so had done tons of research about ants. And he saw these ants that definitely were destroyed by this fire as much as the people were. I mean, their colonies were all burnt up and destroyed as well. But he saw these ants, and what they were doing was gathering supplies and rebuilding, brick.
What you thinking? Not the movie.
I ain't thinking nothing.
You something going on in your head, though.
By brick. That's what they were doing. That's what ants do. They simply go forward and rebuild, no matter the tragedy. And this gave Will an idea. 9 years later, Will finally released his video.
You don't know the video game?
He said how many years? 9 years later.
Yeah, so basically 2000. That's a long time to be working on a video game, though.
9 years later. Okay. 2000.
Game. But it was not the game he had been developing.
Hold on. And she don't need to. That's what she don't need to say none of that.
Nothing, y'all.
She don't.
I'm just gonna say wow.
She gonna be like, that's what I was thinking. And we ain't going for that because she don't want to tell us now.
I don't know nothing.
The one about ants. Instead, it was inspired by the ants he saw marching through the rubble after this horrible fire. In this game he made, you could create characters like avatars who could live entire digital lives, complete with homes.
Do not. Don't say a goddamn thing, see.
I ain't about to say nothing.
Don't say a goddamn thing, see. Because you ain't want to speak up.
Will's a good person, though.
But you ain't want to speak up and say nothing.
I'm off of that. I'm just saying Will's a good person. Because so many people would have just like, I'm just worried about me and my family and not even care about going back and putting yourself in more harm,
That's
I
true,
just think I think that's a beautiful thing.
Characters like avatars who could live entire digital lives, complete with homes and neighbors and spouses and kids and friends, like it really was an actual universe in this game. But this game is not set in a perfect fantasy world. Instead, the universe that these characters live inside of is meant to mimic the real world that we live in, where tragedies can strike, and often do, sort of unpredictably. Death, destruction, wildfires, you name it, that's just kind of part of living in this world. And so in this game, characters periodically would just have horrible things happen to them, and they would have to rebuild, just like the ants had to rebuild, and just like Will and his family and everybody else affected by that fire. You just have to move forward and rebuild. Will's game wound up being a massive success, selling tens of millions of copies worldwide, and today hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people still play it. Will's full name was Will Wright, and the game he created was The Sims.
MC, please don't act like you are.
I wasn't thinking it. I wasn't thinking it at first.
Until I said Sims?
No. When he started talking, I don't know if you said it before he started saying describing the game, and I was like, oh, he's talking about Sims. At first I was like, is it a game called Ant Colony or something, or Ant something? I was thinking trying to think of ant game, something with some ants doing some, I don't know why. I really don't. But then when he started saying that he went a different direction, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, he's talking about Sims. And then you said it anyway. But yeah, I wasn't thinking that I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking that at first, and I wasn't going to say that either. But that's man.
That's dope though.
That's yeah.
Because a lot of times people fail to realize, and they always are looking for inspiration. And inspiration can be right in front of you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people fail to realize that some of your biggest inspiration is right in front of you, but you continue to look past it. Like, who would have ever thought, like, looking at a simple ant, like an ant colony, would give you your inspiration behind one of the biggest games of all time?
Facts.
Released in 2000, people still play Sims today, 25 years later. You know?
Yeah.
That's insane. Hey man, y'all spend
That's
most
a beautiful story.
Yeah. And what's so crazy? Like, that's another reason I'll be like, I don't know how people in California do it with the wildfires.
Yeah, that part's sad because so many people.
Because it just happened again.
Yeah, but what I'm about to say, that even though like it had a good outcome for him and his family and stuff like that, people did lose their lives, and that's the sad part about it. So many people lost their homes.
Yeah.
But like I always say, for like him, in that sense, he didn't really care. Like, this is a material thing. Like, we'll move forward. Like, as long as I have my family, that's the important thing. I have my life and I have my family. But definitely rest in peace to everyone that lost their life. Even
though we have wildfire, like here in Tennessee, we experience wildfires a lot too, but it's mainly East Tennessee that's mainly affected. And like, I'll be thinking, I'm like, damn, that do be happening though. Like, like you got to think about Gallenberg burnt down like a mug after it. And it's a place like, we have, like, I don't know about you, I have a lot of memories as a child in Gallenberg. And I'm like, bro, just imagine, you know?
Yeah.
But hey, y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comment section down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We out.
Time to kick it, got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.